Okay. Well, I've been asked a few times now if there was a recording of the seminar that I did at the International Franchise Show regarding the biggest mistakes that new franchisors make. So this is a background picture of me presenting that. But you can probably see that the room's full, and there's actually a lot of people standing at the back as well. So after I'd finished, quite a few people came up to me and said, could I send the presentation to them? And I thought, well, I know what I'll do. I'll record it. I'll stick it on a YouTube channel, and then those who asked can see it. But of course, anybody who is a new franchisor who's considering franchising their business, then these are just a few key things to consider, because there are some very easy mistakes to make, some of which don't dawn on you until you're some years in. I'm going to do a screen share now to the presentation, and I hope you pick up a few nuggets that are worthwhile for you. So I'll just do this now. Right, so I hope you can see that. Um, I won't dive in with all the usual, we've been established for this long and one thing another and who I am. You're watching this because you're a franchisor and you want to know, are you going to be a franchisor and you want to know a few pointers to begin with. So let's just dive straight in. Now, at Lime Licensing Group, myself and the other consultants, we always start with this, and this is about intellectual property. And if you think about franchising as a generalization, you are granting the rights to somebody else to trade with your brand. So it follows that you should own your brand. And the only ownership that matters is a registered trademark. So a registered trademark really comes down to a very simple process. It's not hard to do. You could, of course, get a solicitor to do it if you want, but actually it's relatively straightforward to do yourself. But you do need to own your trademark, and that isn't expensive. A single brand name registered a trademark only costs sort of like £170. And you can register in additional classes for like another £50. It lasts for 10 years. It costs next to nothing. So just get on and register that trademark. And one of the other reasons why this is important is because if you grant rights to somebody for a brand that you don't own, but somebody else has a registered trademark, then you could expect to be litigated against, but actually maybe your franchisees could too. So the first thing you should do, if you're going to franchise your business, is to register a trademark. Now, actually, even if you're not going to be a franchisor, you should register your trademark anyway. Now, if you get stuck with it or you're not sure what to do, relatively inexpensive to do. We'll do it for you, a few £100, and your trademark will be registered. Now, whilst we're on this topic, it's also a good thing to own the domain names associated with your business. Now you might think you're not bothered really, but it costs very little. You can register a trademark annually for like 10 quid or 20 quid for a particularly attractive one. But um, if if you think you're not going to use it and that's why you're not going to register it, um, well, put yourself in the position that maybe somebody who's going to compete with you decides to put a website on that domain name that maybe you may think rightfully should have been yours. But now they've got a website possibly better optimized than yours using your trading name in it, which might naturally be found above yours. You just don't want to. You just don't need to go there. It doesn't cost very much. So, get the domain names under your ownership. It's not about who the rightful owner is. It's about who gets it first. So get the domain names, and while you're at it, any social media portals that don't allow duplicates, just gather all this intellectual property up together straight away. And if you do, you can thank me later. And if you don't, you'll remember this slide and wish that you had. All right. Secondly, everybody needs a guinea pig. Franchising, there are various ways to describe this, but basically you'll hear the term pilot scheme or test franchise or template franchise. They're all the same thing, but if you don't have that guinea pig, then you're going to have harder lessons to learn when you become a franchisor. And what I mean specifically then, now I've had a bit of fun with this phrase, is running a test franchise. And now this can be under your ownership. Like you could have a member of staff run a test franchise. So let's say you're a cafeteria, and you've been a cafe for some time. Um, you want to know how easy it would be for somebody else to replicate that business in another location. You could do that with your own staff, or maybe you could do it yourself. Imagine you're going to move house 20 miles away. What would the things be that were required? What would you do to get it going again? These are all the things that a franchisee is going to need to do. So there's nothing better than actually doing it yourself. But it might be that this test has already kind of been run, because if you are running your business at the moment in materially the same way as a franchisee would do, then you've kind of already done the test, really, haven't you? But if you're a much bigger business and a franchisee is going to be a segment of that business, then it's even more important to get a guinea pig. Now, something that is well worth saying, excuse me while I have a little bit of tea, is that if you're a bigger business and you're going to set up a test franchise, don't overly assist it, because you're not going to be able to overly assist every franchisee either. So, I had a meeting with a brand that I always remember. The franchisees, it was a sales related franchise. So the franchisee's role was getting sales in. And the company owner said to me, well, what we'll do is we'll do the test franchise then, but I'll get my entire telesales team into it, so that we've got 20 odd people banging the phones out to make sure that test franchise does well. And I went, whoa, hang on a minute. Is that going to be what a franchisee is going to be able to have as well? And I went, no, it isn't. No. I said, well, then, let's not overly assist. A franchise needs to be replicated with genuine effort by one person. If it's going to be an owner-operated franchise, it needs to be set up by an owner-operator and not overly assisted. That's what I mean by overly assistance. But also apply the same restrictions. So if a franchisee is going to have, let's take that sales role again, they're going to manage a territory. Don't put into the figures for that franchise sales figures from outside of the territory, unless the eventual franchise is going to allow that. In an ideal world, you're going to see your territory is, let's say 100,000 households, and you must restrict yourself to 100,000 households. So when you're doing the tests, choose 100,000 households, ideally that you've got no brand reputation in, plonk a guinea pig in there, get them to see how they do, not overly assisted. If they can replicate your business under those circumstances, you are good to go. Also allow for royalties. One assumes there is sufficient margin in your business to allow a franchisee to pay a royalty. Don't forget that. So when you're doing your figures, build a royalty in. And if you don't know what the royalty is going to be, which you probably don't do just yet, just assume that you can still make money by applying a 10% discount. All right. So that then gives you room for a royalty. Now, how long should this exercise run for? I keep on seeing quotes from actually fairly reputable people in the franchise industry saying a pilot should run for 12 months, or a test franchise, or a guinea pig, whatever we're going to call it, should run for 12 months. And it's just not the case, that how can it possibly be that every single business in every single sector, every single price point, magically on 365 days, you then know if it's a goer or not? Well, it's completely ridiculous. It might be that you know all you need to know now, but probably a bit longer. But let's say you know everything you need to know in 3 months' time, then hey, you're good to go. What if in 18 months' time you're still faffing about and your guinea pig's still not making money? Well, then you're still not ready, are you? So it might be several years in the planning. If you ever hear anybody quote 12 months, you know that they don't know what they're talking about. Okay, let's move on. Now, when you do eventually launch, mistake number 3 is not knowing the competition that you're going to have, basically. So let me just run through a few considerations for you here. Same market, same characteristics, price range. Let me go through these with you. So if you are going to be, let's say, a sports coaching business, um, who else is in your marketplace? Who else is in your marketplace? If you're going to be doing, I don't know, let's say badminton coaching or football coaching or whatever it is, have a look at those franchisors who are in the same market as you, but also look at those that are in this that have got the same characteristics. The franchise industry, people who come in buy franchises, a vast majority of them are in a career change moment. So whilst they might have an interest or possibly some previous experience, you don't generally find that very successful people just go and buy a franchise because they kind of have already done it, haven't they? So don't worry too much about um, exactly following exactly what might appeal to people who are already in that marketplace because they're not necessarily going to be your franchisees. Your franchisees are attracted to it, but they're often in a career change moment. So when you launch your franchise, you kind of need to know what else are they going to consider. So have a look at those franchisors who are in the same market as you. Have a look at those who've got similar characteristics. And that might be simply something like this is a second income franchise. What other second income franchises are out there? It might be a work from home business. So, what other work from home businesses are out there? It might be working in sports coaching. So, what other sports coachings are in there? So, also look at similar characteristics. And of course, price point is a characteristic too. So, something that might be considered only up to £10,000, franchisees looking at this sub 10K category, what else are they likely to look at? You kind of need to know this and have a good idea of it. So have a think about that. But the bottom line is, what is your USP? If you're a domestic cleaning franchise, and there are a lot of them, which shows that franchising suits that sector, where are you going to sit against these other people when you launch? They've already got great brand reputation. They've got case studies of franchisees doing well. What's your USP? You kind of need to have something. This is where uh, my work and the work of my colleagues in Lamb Licensing Group, we spend a lot of time on this just to see where you're going to sit because people considering franchising don't generally go for the only one they've ever seen. They generally look at a number. And if they go onto any of the internet portals that are franchise directories, they're very likely going to get bombarded anyway because it's not very easy to opt out of further communications. It should be easy, but it's not. And the reason we know this is because we represent 55, 60 brands in the UK. And a lot of the time, we're going to get inquiries in, and we know that those inquiries didn't actually apply for the franchise we're representing. They just forgot to untick a box or tick a box on a web directory. So um, you will find that even if somebody only intended to look at a small number of franchises, they're going to be exposed to a large number. Now, finding your competition and knowing your competition, I'll give you a really great little hack here. You type into ChatGPT or another AI equivalent, list out to me the UK franchises who are selling X, Y, or Z, and include the franchise fee if you have. Make it as specific as you can. Give it to AI, and it'll go out and it'll pull them all for you. Okay. Mistake number four. Now there's a reasonable topic here about rights granted, and you might be wondering what does rights granted mean? Well, let me just run through a few considerations for you on this particular topic. The rights granted, an easy way for me to describe this to you would be, let's say you are Richard Branson and you own the Virgin brand, which is in banking, transport, airlines, all sorts of things. If you were to grant the rights to a franchisee for the Virgin brand, then they could do any of those things potentially. So you need to restrict those brands. You need to restrict the rights to the brand that it relates to. So have a very specific description of what the franchise is that you are granting them the rights to. And if you're a multi-brand business, you need to make sure that you're not granting the rights from the head company. You need to do it from the sector company. If you're a multi-sector business, you need to make sure that the franchise rights are for that sector. And also, whilst you're on this topic, have a think about online and offline sales. Are we going to say that the franchisors got any rights to online sales, or are they just going to have online sales, or are they going to do both? These are in this section as my life as a franchise consultant. These are things we spend a bit of time on. Now, if you narrow it down to the actual core business, then you've got the potential for multiple franchise networks. Now, the first franchise brand I was ever involved in was our family business, and we were greeting card retailer. Well, we were greeting card distributors, sorry, not retailers, and we supplied thousands of shops up and down the UK just with greetings cards. We then launched a second franchise network for confectionery, but because we had narrowed the rights in the first franchise agreements just to greetings cards, it meant that we could lay a second layer of franchisees in the same area that could have been next door neighbours. And then we launched a third brand, which is a music distribution business, and we did all these budget CDs and DVDs that you could buy a CD for $2.99. I mean, that market's gone now, hasn't it? But back then it was alive and kicking. And so we had a third franchisee covering the same retail base. And so we ended up with three franchisees, in some cases, calling on the same retailer, but they didn't in any way bump into each other. And we were a multi-brand franchisor, but we didn't grant them the rights to the head company. We grant them the rights to the sector. All of this basically mitigates the risks for you, because if one franchisee does disappear, intentionally or not, you've got other franchisees who kind of know the business probably, and maybe they can rescue the situation. Okay, so mistake number 5. And this is not fully understanding territory options. And let me reel off what I'm going to talk about here as well. If you are a franchisor, you're going to be thinking about the restrictions upon a franchisee, and a lot of franchise brands restrict franchisees on territory, so they can only cover a certain area. So your options are have no territory, and some businesses, maybe like recruitment businesses, a lot of them don't have territories. So it might be that you have a no territory business. Some business coaches have no territories. Some cost reduction franchises have no territories. So it's an option. Personally, it's not one I particularly like, but it is an option. You can look into that and make your own mind up. It invites potentially franchisees calling on the same retailers, or canvassing the same retailers, or laying claim, not necessarily retailers, or customers, or laying claim to them. So no territory needs a certain amount of control at head office to make it work. Now, a data territory would be something that would be appropriate, let's say, for a distribution-based business, or one where a franchisee is out and about in an area and not confined to one location. And data could be, for example, a territory based on 100,000 households, which is something I mentioned earlier, or it could be 1 million people, in which case you'd have 60 franchisees covering the UK, wouldn't you? Or it could be done on the number of golfers in an area, if that's your sector. That you can define it on data, and data works very well with businesses where a franchisee is out and about. Now, distance is another one, and this is more applicable for a retailer, for example. So I mentioned a cafeteria earlier on. Let's say that cafeteria is slap bang in the centre of Birmingham. They could have another cafeteria really quite close by, and they wouldn't interrupt. They wouldn't get in each other's way. So in a city, in an urban area, the distance restriction could be quite low. Could be 500 yards. Whereas if you took that same cafeteria and put it in a little village, another cafeteria with the same brand opening up, they're just going to take customers off each other, and so the distance then might be several miles. So, but if that is your sort of thing, if that's your situation, then you're probably going to need to consider a rural and an urban solution to this. But distance works well when there's a fixed location, and really your consideration is how close is too close. Market sector is another one. And that could be, for example, if you're just going to, let's say you're going to be a recruitment consultant, maybe one franchisee would just do pharmaceuticals, another franchisee would just do salespeople, another one would just do graphic designers, whatever. You could also do it by market sector. So you have the same brand name, but the franchisees are going to have market sector. So again, this is a little bit like the previous slide, but it applies to territories. Because you would still define a territory, just say all those pharmaceutical people in it. You could have any hybrid of that, and this is not an exhaustive list. So it's a big topic, but one that is actually very critical to get right, because once you put this into a franchise agreement, the length of which is probably going to be at least 5 years, if you've got it wrong, you can kick yourself for that length of time. All right, now mistake number 6 is saying yes to unsuitable franchisees. Now, let's just have a think about this one for a moment, because your current business, you take staff on and you pay them a salary, and you're probably going to interview those people extremely carefully. And you want to make sure that they're a good fit. You're really going to dig into their backgrounds, one thing and another. Everything seems to go out the window when a franchisee is coming in with a £15,000 payment in their pocket to you. But really, should it? It shouldn't really, should it? I would like to think that you'd be brave enough to say no to a franchisee who's coming in with investment, because the wrong franchisee is going to cause problems for you. Whether that's a cultural fit, whether that's a lack of expertise. There are some things you can train, some things you can't train, aren't they? Considering what your business is and who you deal with, you really should be brave enough to say no, even though they are bringing investment into the business. And I completely understand the human side of this. You've probably spent a fair bit of money to get ready, to be a franchisor. Even the legals have cost several £1,000s, and then somebody comes up who's actually going to give you 100% return on investment with the first franchise sale. Maybe you overlook a few unsuitable characteristics, but have a look at this slide with some detail, because they have to be the right personality. You're not married to them, but you've got to get on with them. They need to have the right financial status. It's not acceptable to take a franchisee on who's putting their last penny into the business and has no more money, because then the car's going to break down as soon as they bought the franchise. They're going to have a problem, and it'll become your problem too. So just follow your gut feel. But this is a mistake I see very often. Okay. Mistake number 7, not focusing on network optimization. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I need to go back one. Let me just go back. Okay. Not focusing on network optimization. When you put your first franchisee on, they are then kind of the proof that it works, aren't they? So what I would suggest with this, that the best way for me to get this over to you is that the first franchisees all buy on potential. All the rest buy on reality. Now, you're going to get away with potential for quite a few months, probably. But sooner or later, the reality is what the next group of franchisees are going to buy into on. And so your first franchisees are your most important franchisees, the most important ones you're likely to have. So make sure that you're not just hell-bent on selling franchises, as many are. What matters is that the first franchisees who come on board are replicating the business model. And this comes down to your ability to train and support them when they need it the most at the beginning. These people need a franchisor who can impart everything that they have learned into this new little business so that they can get going. And that means that you're optimizing the network as it comes along. Each new franchisee who joins needs that help and support. But what you're really doing, from my point of view as a builder of franchise networks, if each franchisee who comes along is being looked after by head office, is being motivated to do what they need to do, then you are going to get a positive endorsement from all of them. And that means that when franchisee number 5 or 6 or 7 is coming along, you don't need to be nervous about who they speak to. Tell them to speak to anybody, because you're focused on optimizing the network as the network comes on board. They're all going to say similar things, and that positive endorsement is going to allow you to build the network faster. So in many ways, you're better off going a bit slower than a bit faster. Sometimes it's a bit hard to keep reins on it because a successful brand does have a power of its own and grows and snowballs. But if you feel that you haven't got the capacity to train a large number of new franchisees, then don't take them on. You'll get there easier and with a more solid business in a few years' time than tripping over yourselves with new recruits whom you can't optimize with them. Right, I'll go back to the slide I've just given you a sneak peek of inadvertently. At least you know this is genuine and unscripted, don't you? So mistake number 8, thinking it's easy. It's just as easy to get right, I think. I've done this for over 30 years now. It's just as easy to get right as it is to get wrong. None of this is rocket science, but experience is an extremely valuable teacher. And so I would suggest, even if it's not Lime Licensing Group, go and pick the brains of other consultants. And I do mean consultants, people who have been franchisors themselves, ideally, or who are working within franchise consultancies who have been franchisors. You might know a friend of yours who's franchised their business and they've done well, but they've only done one business and they might have been lucky. The skill comes in building in the experience and the expertise from multiple brands and multiple sectors over multiple years. That's the advice you need. And that's why I would suggest you need a franchise consultant. But there's free advice out there. We will give any company time to help them explore franchising without any fee or any commitment. So if you're looking at franchising, and you're at this point where you're going to do it, you're just sort of fact finding, call us. We will give you time for free and no commitment. And then if you feel that we can add something to you and that we can help you or that you want some additional assistance, then we can discuss terms then. Okay, so that's it. And I hope that was worthwhile. Look out for me at the next franchise shows. That's me. That's me there when in the green shirt. And if it's not me, it'll be one of my colleagues in Lime Licensing Group delivering a similar seminar. It's a very popular session, but we're available all the time, so you don't need to wait for the next show, do you? Anyway, hope that was useful. Bye for now.